Buenos dias, buenas tardes, and welcome to my channel, Divine Esme, where we talk a lot about healing the inner child, your inner wounds, and working towards developing your most authentic and divine self each and every day. Today, I want to touch on the act of self-forgiveness and what it means to really forgive yourself and why that is extremely important throughout your life and your healing journey. So if you'd like to hear more, please stay tuned. Good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to my channel, Divine Esme. So today I want to talk a little bit about the act of self-forgiveness and what it means to really forgive yourself and why that is important and why I've noticed how important it is as I continue to go through my healing journey each and every day. So the act of forgiveness itself, so to forgive means to make a decision to let go of any resentment, any sadness, any guilt you have towards a person or a situation, but it's really the act of letting go. So when we are thinking about forgiveness, sometimes we don't necessarily work on forgiving ourselves, or sometimes we kind of continue to hold on to a lot of the things that happened in the past. And this is why the act of self-forgiveness is important and why it needs to come into play, because when we forgive a person or an individual for something that happened to us or something that they did to us or whatever the case is, if we do not forgive ourselves as well as we have forgiven that person, we will continue to relive that experience over and over and over and over again. And it's going to be really hard for us to be able to fully let go. So throughout my career, I have worked on talking to folks about the importance of self-forgiveness. And I have noticed that sometimes when people do not forgive themselves, when something happens to them or when someone does something to them, it oftentimes leads into behaviors of avoidance. So what we see in the therapeutic setting is we see people that begin to struggle with substance abuse disorders or begin to struggle with mental illness or begin to fall into the patterns of being with people who are abusive, being with people that don't support being in their most divine or authentic self, or helping people get to their most divine or authentic self, because they kind of default into those patterns of behavior, or they default into what is feeling comfortable for them. So for me, what I have noticed is in my healing journey, as I was going through a really rough time in my marriage and then in ultimately leading into my divorce, I was really trying very hard to forgive my then spouse for the infidelity, for the pain and the agony, for the abuse that had happened, all the psychological abuse. I had worked on trying to forgive to the point of exhaustion, to the point that I was so focused on the forgiveness of this person that I didn't actually sit down and process what had actually happened to me, because I was so focused on their well-being, on their needs, that I put myself in the back burner and didn't really think about, how has this affected me? So when I ultimately decided to leave my marriage, I had already been to the point where I have forgiven my spouse for what had happened. However, I kind of just sat down in my own feelings after leaving the environment and realized that, I was still kind of living that situation in that moment, because I had not fully processed all the trauma that had happened and all the years of living in survival. I never fully gave myself the opportunity to really think about what happened. So as I continued to heal, I noticed that throughout this situation, I had not really forgiven myself. I had not thought about, like really what I was doing, or I didn't really think about like how I had actually been struggling with a lot of these feelings and emotions because I was so stuck into trying to make sure that this individual felt okay with letting go and what happened. So when I had to really step out of that, I noticed that I continued to look back and blame myself and think about, like, how did I contribute to this? Like, what did I do? Was I a person that, factored into this cycle? Like, why did I allow myself to stay for this long? Why did I allow myself to, not really see those red flags? And I think the guilt even fell on me and on my shoulders even more because I am trained, to be able to see and study behaviors of patterns and how they affect people and how they can lead people to do certain things. Like, I think for me, it was even harder to forgive myself for everything I had went through because I blamed myself and I didn't forgive myself for the time I had spent there. I was just saying, like, how did I not see it? How did I not, really take a look at what was happening right in front of my eyes? Why didn't I notice all these red flags? And, today I still kind of flip flop and go back and forth between these emotions and these feelings. And I noticed that as I'm doing that is almost, keeping me in the past. It's almost making me sort of relive the situation every single day over and over. And it sort of bleeds into my ability to date and to engage with other people. It really does interfere with my ability to have a healthy relationship sometimes because I'm constantly going back and forth and seeing all these patterns and all these behaviors now. But at the end of the day, I'm not necessarily fully letting go of what occurred if I'm constantly feeling guilty about what happened or feeling like I, could have done something back then. And I noticed these things when I was working with individuals where sometimes, they were stuck in a situation of where they were looking at their traumatic experiences and they're saying, like, why me? Like, why did this happen to me? And not really fully working on the art of self-forgiveness and understanding that certain things are not their fault and certain situations that had happened are not because they deserved it, are not because of what they did or because of how they act. Certain things happen in our lives, and sometimes it's so hard to understand why or what when we're living it. And imagine if you are constantly reliving that situation over and over, like you are actually stuck in the past and you're not really fully understanding the situation for what it is and able to change it because you are constantly stuck in that pattern. So like Joe Dispenza says, even in one of his books, he talks about how oftentimes when we sort of continue to live in our past, we almost train our brains to kind of just be stuck in that scenario and in that situation. Like we cannot see past that, and our brain is just constantly reliving and reliving and reliving, and we're often just stuck in survival mode, and you're just in that surviving mode constantly, and your body just doesn't catch a break. And I think I have felt that, for several months. I have felt, feeling like I'm just constantly like looking back and saying, like, how did I do this? Like, I wasted so much time. I wasted so many years of my life, a decade of my life into this relationship. And why didn't I see it? Like, I almost sometimes even think about, like, am I behind, from my peers because I almost like stayed stuck in this situation that wasn't good for me for so long. And even that, contributes to my inability of not moving forward because I'm still kind of thinking about, like, why me? Why me? How did I get here? What did I do? Again, just kind of cycling and reliving that each and every day. And I want to just quote, my therapist, and also quote one of my best friends who said this to me this week. Like, you have to really give yourself grace. And you have to understand that, even with my marriage, it is a form of grief. And now that everything is finally over, I can almost breathe and kind of work on the release. And in order for me to work on the release, I really have to forgive myself and understand that certain things did not happen to me because they were my fault, or certain things did not occur throughout my life, and I'm not behind in any way. I need to give myself grace and really allow myself to stay present. Because if we stay present and we actually engage in what is happening each and every day in our lives, it really, really feeds that authenticity that we're craving and we're trying to get to. It really helps us get into a better space in our healing journey. And it helped us learn about the art of forgiveness, the art of truly giving yourself that grace and that level of understanding that you give to someone else when you forgive them for whatever it is that happened. You need to also, in the process, understand that that same kindness and that same level of forgiveness needs to be given to you, because if you don't sit down and process it, you're only going to be holding yourself back from being your best self and from learning from these experiences and these things that occur, so that ultimately you are in a better space if they do happen again. So thank you again for holding this space with me at Divine Esme. And if you are liking any of my content or any of my videos, please remember to comment, like, subscribe, and share. And I look forward to talking with you guys again. Take care.